So, uh, what I want to talk about today is Yu Hakusho. It's probably one of the older animes that I've watched. Now, I'll be honest, I haven't seen every anime. And again, comment below if there's a specific anime that you think I should watch. There are some that I've started, Naruto, One Piece. There's a few, Attack on Titan. There's a few animes that I've started that I haven't finished, and even older ones that people have recommended to me that I just have not been able to get through all of it. Um, but Inuyasha is one of the older ones that I think I've seen that I got recommended, like it was hyped up and it was recommended. But at the time that I was watching Inuyasha, this one, Yu Yu Hakusho, is the one that I was pretty consistently on. I mean, I'll say the two animes I was probably the biggest follower of when I was younger were Dragon Ball and Yu Yu Hakusho. So Yu Yu Hakusho has a special place in my mind because the way that they did the character development, and not to say it was unique, like there's no other show that's ever done it or it's impossible to replicate in other mediums, but the way that they did the character development of the main character, Yusuke, and then the relationship between Yusuke and Kuwabara was just his. To start, okay, so the show is about a middle school kid who is a bully. He's known around town. Everybody fears him. He like beats people up, all this stuff. Kuwabara is a rival bully at another school. They always fight, but Yusuke always beats Kuwabara every time they fight. Okay. So that's the dynamic that you're introduced to them as, like they're rivals of each other, and not rivals in the sense that Kuwabara is like a match for Yusuke. More that Kuwabara always loses. Like every time they encounter each other, Kuwabara loses. Okay. So the show picks up, like literally the first episode picks up as you're introduced to this character, introduced to the dynamic of the person that he is, and you're kind of not rooting against him, but just like, okay, this is interesting. Like, what's the point of the story that you're telling here? And again, spoiler alert. It's the first episode, but spoiler alert. He dies, and he dies because he sees a kid running across the street. He decides, oh no, like the kid's gonna get by a car because the kid was chasing like a ball that was bouncing across the street, and the parent wasn't paying attention, which is a whole nother thing, but that's fine. And he pushes the kid out of the way, and as he's diving in front of the kid to push him out of the way, he gets hit by the car. He dies. The first, let's call it joke, but like the first kind of throwaway joke that they have of the show is when he meets the Grim Reaper, which in this iteration of this cartoon is a female Reaper named Botan. When he meets, he's like, "Oh, okay, how's the kid? Like, is the kid okay?" And they're like, "Yeah, but just so you know, what you did was pointless because the car was going to swerve at the last second, and the kid would have lived anyway. So you basically died for no reason." And the whole catalyst of the show is that the afterworld wasn't ready for Yusuke to be there because they weren't expecting him to sacrifice himself for someone else. Like he had been such a bully and such like an anti-hero the whole life that he had lived. And mind you, like this is only up till middle school. They just assumed that he wasn't going to do it, so they weren't prepared for the fact that he died. So they give him these tests. He becomes a spirit detective. It's just a good show. Like the way that they build the characters around Yusuke, his mom. They go into the drinking problem she has. His relationship with the rest of the people, like when he comes back, because he dies and he goes through these tests and he comes back and he becomes a spirit detective. When he meets Genkai, who's the psychic who has all this training and power, and he needs to learn from her so he can be a better spirit detective. It's a good show. It's very well rounded. Like the way that the writing is done, there aren't very many power creeps. The same way like in Dragon Ball, like, oh, Goku isn't strong enough and then he immediately becomes stronger. There aren't a lot of power creeps like that. There are actually genuinely times where he's just not going to win. And it's not like within that battle he gets better. It's like he has to go and do training and then he'll get better. Okay. The writing of the show is really good. Like I remember the first time I watched it thinking like, wow, this is like really dark. Like for a cartoon. And I mean, at that time I had seen it and I wasn't watching a lot of anime, and I get other anime do darker topics, I guess. So like thinking like a Death Note, something like that, like a dark tone. But that's one of my first introductions to the idea of anime and like it being less, I guess lighthearted is the best way to say it. Because watching like Gundam Wing and Dragon Ball, you don't get the same sense of characters being flawed the way that you do in Inuyasha. So you have the Yusuke character, you have the character who's being a bully, the redemption of that bully. He had another rival bully, they are now friends, and then this growth that kind of happens throughout the show. And then it's interesting because one of the last arcs that they do, because they'll do the initial him training, him becoming the spirit detective, then you have the dark tournament arc, and then you have the other spirit detective arc where you find out about the spirit detective that was a spirit detective before him named Sensui. Sensui goes bad, that becomes a whole thing, and then you find out why he went bad and all of that. And then you have the final arc where you find out, oh, surprise, Yusuke's more than he seems. And then there's that final arc. It's interesting because once they get to that third arc where they're doing the stuff with Sensui, they go into mental health in a way that I was not prepared for when I was watching the show. Like, the show obviously tackles certain topics, but to go into mental health the way that they did with that character was a very interesting choice, which again is why I like the show. So it's a very unique perspective on the concept of a hero and then showing the humanity behind that hero, right? Okay. So I'm not going to spoil all the episodes. I'm not going to spoil all of the character development because honestly, I do recommend that people, if they're interested in anime, they go out, they watch a show, and they get to experience it for themselves. I've ruined the Yusuke and Kuwabara become friends and that there are arcs and, you know, Sensui and all that and Dark Tournament, but you can still enjoy it knowing that those things are coming because you don't know how those things kind of shape up from what I've said. Okay. There are going to be more like this. There's going to be more anime, more just TV shows that I've watched that I'm just going to kind of give a high level, and then if you want to hear more specifics, comment down below and I'll do more specific breakdowns. It'll be more spoilery. If you want me to do specific episodes, I can do those. If you just want in general just complete arcs, like if it's anime, the arcs, spoiling those, or if it's a TV show, each season, just spoiling the season, not going like episode by episode. But let me know down in the comments below, right there, and that's it.